that button. All right, we're streaming. Good. Okay. So again, my name is Chris Berry. We do these weekly wisdom webinars every week, every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and then they're recorded. So if you do have questions, you can always follow up. And these are really driven by questions from clients or people kind of in our network. And they submit them ahead of time via email typically. And if you do have a question or something's unclear, as I'm going through this, feel free to type it into the Q&A or chat section, and I will get it addressed. And so with that, I think we have 4 questions that are submitted ahead of time. Here's another one coming in. All right, we'll get to that shortly. And let me share my screen. And before I get that, before I do that, we always start with a positive focus, something positive that happened within the last week or so. And my positive focus is that my lovely daughter, Madison, turned 9. So she's my little ball of joy, my little soccer star. Couldn't be happier with her. So it's great seeing them grow up. All right, with that, we will share my screen. All right, so this is general advice. Keep in mind, you want to see how this applies to your situation, make sure to reach out to us. So the first question, what is a ladybird deed? Do I need one? We've talked about this before, but something that comes up and someone submitted a question about it. So the big issue is dealing with real estate. So a lot of times when we're talking about estate planning, one of the first things is dealing with estate administration, because everyone wants to avoid probate upon death. And so with estate administration, you need to understand how assets transfer upon death. And so first would be joint ownership. So joint ownership, great for a married couple. Wouldn't recommend naming anyone else joint to any of your accounts. I wouldn't recommend naming any of your kids joint to your real estate, because you're opening yourself up to all the potential liabilities of that person. Second would be beneficiary designations. So I met with a family today. Mom was living with son, just had a couple of bank accounts and a life insurance policy. Didn't really have much, but we wanted to stress that with those bank accounts at the credit union, that they were transfer on death or payable on death to someone to avoid probate. Third would be a trust. Not everyone needs a trust, but there's a lot of good reasons why you may want to consider a trust. But if an asset doesn't go through one of the first 3 ways, then it ends up going into probate. And we want to avoid this because it's time consuming. So it's a 5-month at least process in Michigan. And typically 3 to 5% of any assets get eaten up in fees, whether it's inventory fees, filing fees, publication fees, etc. So it's time consuming. And then the cost. That's why people want to avoid probate. So what's the one thing I didn't mention? Didn't mention a will, because a will does not avoid probate. What a will does is gives instructions to the probate court on how to administer your estate. So if you have like liquid assets like 401ks, IRAs, life insurance, a lot of times those are handled through beneficiary designations. But where people get hung up is on real estate, because you would never want to name your kids joint on your real estate. There's a bunch of reasons why that's a bad idea. From a tax standpoint, from a liability standpoint, just a bad idea. So how do we avoid probate with real estate? Excuse me. Well, one option is you could, excuse me, swallow dog. So one option is you can name the trust as the owner. So we would deed it directly into the trust. The other option is we can do what's called a ladybird. And what a ladybird deed is a type of deed to say that it's in your name while you're alive, and then upon death, it goes into the trust. So basically, it's kind of like a beneficiary designation for your home. So your home is yours. You can do whatever you want while you're alive and well, but then upon death, it goes into the trust, or it goes to whoever you've named as a beneficiary, thereby avoiding probate. So we do a ton of these ladybird deeds. Anytime you have a revocable living trust or a will-based estate plan and you own real estate, we're almost always doing a ladybird deed. We probably do conservatively like 500 ladybird deeds a year. Like we do a ton of ladybird deeds. Now, when would you not do a ladybird deed? If you're setting up an asset protection trust. So if we're deeding the property directly to the trust, then we would deed it directly into the castle trust, because then you could sell the property and the proceeds of the sale would be protected. Another nice thing about the ladybird deed. So what does it do? Big thing is it avoids probate. And then also what it can do is avoid estate recovery upon death. So if you still own the home and you were to need Medicaid, the home would be exempt. And then with the ladybird deed, it would avoid that estate recovery where they could place a lien on your home upon passing. So if you own real estate, really, there's two options. One is that ladybird deed. The other is we would deed that home directly to the asset protection trust. And really, those are the only two ways that typically we deal with real estate. If you have second pieces of property, I guess a third option might be like a rental property. We might put that into an LLC. Then we would assign to the trust. So my point with this, don't forget about real estate when it comes to putting together your estate plan and coming up with a plan to avoid probate. Ladybird deed, it's a great tool. All right, any questions on that? Let me hit a couple buttons here. All right, nothing on that. All right, next question that was submitted. We've talked about this a little bit. With Social Security going up 5.9%, as you said, does that mean increased inflation? The answer is yes. So don't think you're getting like extra like 6%. Part of that will go to your Medicare premiums, but also just the cost of everything is going up a lot. Like inflation is one of the big concerns right now. If so, what things should we consider? Really, the simplest thing is like don't have too much in cash. Okay. And when we look at like the investing world, just kind of a simplified way to look at this, we have some of our money geared towards growth. You have some of your money geared towards safety. You have some of your money geared towards liquidity. So what's money that's geared towards safety and liquidity? This is money that you have typically at the bank. This is cash. Really, think of this as your now bucket of money. And really all this should be is whatever your emergency fund is. Whatever big expenses you have for the year. And then if you are in retirement, whatever your income gap is for the year. So if there is a gap between, say, your Social Security and pension and what your expenses are, then you should probably have that sitting in cash. So you don't have to worry about the ups and downs in the market. So the first thing is don't have too much money in cash, because otherwise you're missing out on growth. Because what are you getting for interest rates right now? Like nothing for what's in your checking or savings account. Someone asked, are I bonds a great idea with increasing inflation? We really have two issues here. One is inflation is going skyrocketing potentially. And unfortunately, we have this weird situation where interest rates, especially fixed interest rates, are super low right now. So what that means is like, so the nice thing is like if you're looking to refinance, your mortgage rates are super low. The downside of the low interest rates, like anything you have in cash is not earning. But the big one is bonds. Like bonds are getting killed right now and have been getting killed over the last couple of years. And so I'm not to say that any tool is good or bad, but just maybe now's not the time to look at bonds as that tool. But instead, if, so you have a certain amount of money sitting here in cash, right? That's our now bucket of money. This is the money at the bank. But what we should be doing is reallocating money to growth. And either that's going to be money that's geared towards growth and liquidity. This would be having money in the market, or money that's geared towards safety and growth. This is where we look at tools that have the power of indexing. So just big picture, kind of the market's going to go up and down. And this is also an area where we see like kind of a mixture of equities, like stocks and bonds. So some people like heard of that 60-40 portfolio. This is another area where just bonds are just getting killed. So that's where we might want to even move some of the money from this side over here, because the way that this side grows, not say it's better or worse, is it just grows different. If the market goes down, you don't lose anything. If the market goes up, you collect the upside on the market. So if we are concerned with inflation, then the key is to make sure we don't have too much money just sitting at the bank, but instead reallocate that to one of the sides of growth, whether we're putting the money in the market or we're looking at some of the tools that involve indexing. And I wouldn't look at bonds necessarily as the answer right now because of the very low interest rates, fixed interest rates. Like bonds have been getting killed recently. So there's other options there. And if you want to talk more about it, it really depends on your situation. Like how I'm going to advise someone who's age 30 with regards to where they should be investing as a certified financial planner is going to be very different than someone who's age 60 plus. But yeah, the big thing is don't just have too much money sitting at the bank. Like I have some clients that last time we chatted, they have like 1.5 million just sitting in cash, kind of figuring out what to do with it. Like, well, there's certain things you can do where you can protect the money and still get a good rate of return, or like a rate of return that's better than having it just sitting cash right now. So, okay. Let me see anything on that. I-bonds, but I-bonds are 7%. Again, they're a tool. What I would do is first figure out what is your goal, figure out the best strategy, and then pick the right tool. All right. Next, 3. We want to get to lower tax bracket in retirement. What tools are available? I've heard of this bank on yourself strategy using whole life insurance. Is that the way that we should go? As a fiduciary, I'm going to give you that frustrating answer of it depends on your situation. So everyone's situation is a little bit different, but what this kind of bank on yourself strategy, really what it is a kind of a marketing tool to sell insurance. Like you see a lot of insurance only people pitching this. And a lot of times what they're pitching is whole life insurance. You have to be careful because there's a lot of people who are, all they do is sell insurance. And so their only tool is like a hammer. So everything looks like a nail to them. And I'm not saying that insurance shouldn't be considered as an asset class. And really there's 2 ways to look at insurance, or specifically life insurance. And it depends on where you are in life. One is some people have a need for life insurance. So this is like myself. I have 2 young kids. My kids are 9 and 11. I have a wife. Like I have a business. Like God forbid I get hit by a bus. I need to take care of a lot of people. I need to take care of my team members, my employees. I need to take care of my kids. Most importantly, I need to take care of my wife. So I need to take care of a lot of people. So I'm worth a lot more dead than alive. So I very much have a need for life insurance. And the cheapest type of life insurance is always going to be term life insurance. So I have a good amount of term life insurance. But then there's another way to look at life insurance, and to look at it as a asset class. Okay? So this isn't that you need life insurance, but this is maybe where you want life insurance, not necessarily just for the life insurance aspect of it, but for some of the advantages of it, where it's more of a want. Like I sat down, or I had a Zoom with some clients yesterday. They have about $2 million worth of assets, and we're talking about trying to get as tax efficient as possible. And a lot of times we're looking at life insurance as part of this kind of tax play where you have different types of taxable buckets. You have non-qualified money, which is like checking, savings, real estate, brokerage, where you're taxed on the gains. You have tax deferred. This is like your traditional IRAs, 401k, 403b. Then you have your tax free. Especially with the concerns of where taxes are going in the future, a lot of people want to get money over to this tax free bucket, which are things like Roth, cash value life insurance. Typically, we're using index universal life versus whole life. Whole life is more just about like permanent death benefit. So maybe we look at whole life if you're just looking for a permanent death benefit, but IUL can give you tax-free growth tied to the index, tax-free income while you're alive, tax-free death benefit, tax-free long-term care. 529s, they have to be used for education and health savings accounts. So looking at life insurance, you probably heard the term like buy term, invest the rest. If you need life insurance, the cheapest life insurance you're going to find is term life insurance if you're just looking for that death benefit. But when you get to either accumulating wealth and you want to put more money over here, sometimes you can't contribute to Roth. That's where cash value life insurance may make sense. Or if you've accumulated a lot of wealth and now you're looking at the rest of your retirement and what you're leaving the next generation, we might want to be moving money from the tax deferred accounts over here or from the non-qualified accounts to the tax-free bucket. Not only for your retirement, but also what you leave for the next generation. So this bank on yourself, typically what they're pitching is this whole life insurance, which depending on, it's a tool, it may not be the best tool for your situation, but the concept's similar, is that you have this money and it's an asset that you can draw on. Typically, if this is the route you'd want to go, instead of the whole life insurance, we'd probably look at index universal life. Whole life insurance doesn't have some of the growth potential that IUL does. So is this the route we should go? Again, the answer is I really don't know. It depends on your situation to figure out if life insurance as an asset class makes sense in your situation. I would always first, like the simplest answer is just look at Roth conversions, but you may be in a position where you want something more than that, or you can't do enough Roth conversions for it to make sense. All right. Boom. All right, this kind of goes along with it. This question just came in this morning. So I'm healthy, mid-70s with 1.5 million IRA. At what age will a Roth conversion or life insurance move benefit me more than the grantors? So again, the same concept that we just brought up of we have non-qualified accounts, tax deferred, and then tax free. So if we have 1.5 million here, at what age will Roth conversions or life insurance benefit me more than the grantors? I would say right away, because of we know the taxes are changing. So we have the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And this runs from 2018 to 2025. And what it says is basically in 2025, taxes across the board are going up 3 to 4%. So if you're at the 22% tax bracket, that's going to 25. 24, it's going to 28%. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second, we're about $30 trillion in debt. So these tax rates could go up much higher in the future. Okay. So if taxes go up in the future, which we know they are, then the value of your tax deferred accounts go down. So that's where a lot of our clients are moving money from tax deferred, paying the tax now at say 22%, because if they wait and they just take RMDs in the future, they're going to be paying a 25% tax. So at what age would a Roth conversion or life insurance benefit me more than the grantors? Now, because we know taxes are going up in 2025. Now you may be saying, well, the value of that account's going down. Well, it doesn't really, because let's say we have $100,000 inside of an IRA. And let's assume a 20% tax rate, just to keep the math easy. So if we're to do a Roth conversion, that would leave you about $80,000, right? So it looks like you've lost money on this deal. And a lot of people are hung up on this idea that, well, I want that bigger growth on that bigger number. But understand that $100,000 pre-tax is the same as 80,000 post-tax. Like, it's just, you have to pay the tax at some point, because remember, this is always going to be taxed. It's just a matter of when. So some people get hung up on having this bigger amount of money in this pre-tax bucket. It really doesn't benefit you, because let's say the investment goes up. So let's say it's invested in the same exact thing. So both go up 10%. So this goes up 10,000, this goes up 8,000. Now we're left with 88,000 post-tax in the Roth, 110,000 pre-tax. Now that looks better, but we still have to take out our tax, right? So if we're to take out the tax, that's 22,000. And so what does that leave us at the end of the day? 88,000. So if taxes remain the same, understand you're not growing a bigger chunk of change. What are you doing? You're growing a bigger benefit for the government, right? Because if you delay taking the tax, you pay 22,000. You pay the tax now, you pay 20,000. But the amount that you get at the end of the day, all things being equal, remains exactly the same. So whether it's pre-tax or post-tax really doesn't affect you if taxes remain exactly the same. But we know taxes are going up, right? At least 3 to 4%, if not much higher. So this 20% tax that we may pay in the future could easily be 30 plus or more. So if the question is, at what age will a Roth conversion or moving to life insurance benefit me more than the grantor? What I would answer is now. Like, I don't care what your age is. We know taxes are going up in the future. So I'd rather pay a 22 or 24% tax now than a 25 or 28 or higher tax in the future. So even if you don't have kids, just for the rest of your retirement, by paying the tax now, you're going to save money. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, here's a question that just came in. And then this is the last one. So if you do have any other questions or comments, please make sure to put them into the chat now, or the Q&A. Follow-up question to last week. Whoops. Follow-up question. So last week we were talking about legacy trusts. You indicated the legacy trust was follow bloodline, which means children had at some point. If qualified assets have to be withdrawn, at the end of 10 years, those assets need to go. Can the children trustees create taxable accounts within the legacy trust? If not, don't those assets become part of the family trust? All right, yeah. So what we're talking about here are legacy trusts and IRAs. So again, focusing on these tax deferred accounts. So not only are we talking about like how it affects your retirement, but also what we leave to the next generation. So what is a legacy trust? Is basically a trust that upon death says, instead of it going outright to the beneficiaries, it's held in trust for their benefit. Okay. And so let's say we have you, and then let's say you have 3 kids. Each kid would then inherit their own separate share trust. So kind of think of it as your one trust upon death splits into 3 separate shares, 1 share for each one of your children. And each child could then manage their own share separately, and whatever they keep in the trust is protected from divorces, creditors, bankruptcies, etc. So let's say you still have pre-tax IRA money. Now, we had the Secure Act that passed in 2020 that says that now you can only stretch it upon death up to 10 years, the IRAs. All the taxes have to be paid. So then your IRA would split into 3 separate IRAs, 1 IRA for each child. Okay. So we would have the Ed Trust for the benefit of child 1, the Ed Trust for the benefit of child 2, the Ed Trust for the benefit of child 3, and each would own that IRA. Now what the Secure Act says is that, okay, the taxes have to be paid and the money has to be withdrawn within 10 years. But here's what could happen is that money, you pay the tax, and then the remainder could just go into a non-qualified brokerage account in the name of the trust. Okay. But the taxes would have to be paid. So yeah, we could continue to stretch it out over the lifetime of the, or not stretch it out. We'd have to pay all the taxes within 10 years, but the money wouldn't have to be distributed. So the money could remain in trust, still asset protected, just that the taxes would have to be paid within 10 years. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. So yeah, so those legacy trusts, the IRA taxes have to be paid, but the money doesn't necessarily have to be distributed. Is there a way to avoid Medicare premium increases when you cash in assets to raise your modified adjusted gross income, conversions, real estate, etc.? Yeah, so one of the downsides of doing these like Roth conversions or pulling money from these tax deferred accounts is that it can have effect on your Medicare premiums. And so what's going to happen is 2 years following the conversion, your Medicare premiums will go up. But then after that, assuming you don't do any more conversions, then your premiums go down. It's just a byproduct of doing this. There's no way really around it other than if you look at some tax minimization strategies in the year you're doing those conversions. But typically, especially with the standard deductions, we don't have a lot of options there. So it's one of those things where you just have to bite the bullet and know that 2 years from the time you do a Roth conversion or you pull money out of the IRA, your Medicare premiums will go up for that year. But then if that is the last year you do them, then the Medicare premiums will drop back down. So it's just there's no way around it other than if you were to find some other ways to minimize taxes in that specific year. Maybe you have losses or something that you can offset it. But even with that standard deduction, like if you're looking at charitable deductions or something like that, it's going to be hard to do it. So that's where some clients who they don't want to deal with it, they do bigger chunks, even if it gets them into a higher tax bracket. And they say, you know what, I'll just bite the bullet, pay the taxes. I know I'm going to jump into a higher tax bracket, but now I know for the rest of my retirement, I'm going to be in a much lower tax bracket and I'm going to be in the lowest possible bracket for Medicare premiums. But yeah, we don't have any perfect solution around the Medicare premiums increasing, but other than to say that the tax savings is far going to outweigh typically the increase in Medicare premiums. But yeah, we don't want you surprised that in 2 years you do the Roth conversion 2021, your Medicare premiums will shoot out in 2023. But then if you don't do it in 2024 or 2022, then your Medicare premiums in 2024 will drop back down. So it's not like your Medicare premiums are permanently increased. It's just 2 years following the time that you do those conversions. So that's where I had a call today with a 30-year-old. Got my information referred by one of his parents. And we talked about it, where's his family accumulating wealth? So too often I see a lot of my clients come in and they've accumulated wealth and all of that wealth is in these pre-tax accounts. And now we're having to like de-tax or figure out ways to say, okay, I saved everything pre-tax in the 401ks because maybe Roths weren't around or it was kind of beat into our head to defer paying taxes as long as possible. But now we get to retirement and we look around and like, oh my God, okay, I got Social Security, which could be potential income. I have my RMDs, I have a pension. I'm in the same, if not a higher tax bracket in retirement, right? Or I sat down with some clients today. He's about 3 months away from retiring from GM. And we were looking at his current income. And then when he retires with his Social Security, and if he doesn't do anything with his RMDs, he's actually in the same, not the same exact. Right now, he's at the high end of the 24% tax bracket. Well, when he retires, he's going to be on the low end of the 22% tax bracket. So he's not in that much of a lower tax bracket in retirement. And we know that that 24 is going up to 28 and that 22 is going up to 25. So if he doesn't do anything, he's going to be in a higher tax bracket, 25%, than while he was when he was working, which is 24%. So you have to understand, not only looking at taxes through the micro lens of minimizing taxes in a specific year, but you have to look at it through the macro lens of minimizing taxes over your retirement, as well as what you leave to the next generation, And then on top of that, overlaying what the current tax laws are, where we know with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, taxes are going up 3 to 4%. And then looking at the overall environment, and this is where it gets a little scary for me, we're about $30 trillion in debt. Prior to the pandemic, we we're $22 trillion. Prior to the pandemic, we passed the Secure Act, where the government was going after the money that your kids are going to inherit in those pre-tax accounts to cover that $22 trillion debt. But now we had another 8, 9, almost $10 trillion on top of that. So that's why I think taxes for our clients who are moving into retirement or are retired, it's one of the biggest ways that we can help you is try to minimize taxes over the rest of your retirement and what you leave to the kids. And then if you do have working age kids, have a conversation with them or refer them to us to talk about where are they accumulating wealth, because there's things we can do ahead of time to make it a lot easier versus, all right, now we've worked, we've saved. Oh my gosh, we have $2 million pre-tax. We're going to get clobbered in taxes moving forward. What do we do? So if we can address this earlier, it makes things a lot easier. So, but again, don't beat yourself up if you have a lot of money pre-tax. Like that's just the way everything it was always done in the past. Like Roth IRAs were relatively new. Roth 401ks, a lot of employers don't even offer the Roth 401ks. But just taxes, I think it's one of the biggest risks and one of the biggest opportunities. And we spent the last couple months sitting down with our clients and just figuring out what are the last minute tax moves to handle throughout this year. So, all right, that is all I have for submitted questions. So if you do have a question, please put it into the Q&A now, or if you do have something you want to mention. All right, with that, thank you everyone. Make it a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.